Yeah, let's go. So welcome everyone to the April 2019 Wikimedia Monthly Activities Meeting. Lincoln, the co-host, would also like to say hello and is also joined by his friend Winston, so you may hear some chatter between them because they love to talk. So to get things started, let's jump into this month's agenda. And I've got the clicker. All right, so this is a relatively different meeting this month because we had a cancellation and we didn't have any other proposals. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit and just a little bit about how this meeting works. So we're going to have a movement update. We're going to have a call for proposals for future meetings, which is where we're going to talk just a little bit about this meeting. Then we're going to have our usual movement strategy update with the wonderful movement strategy team. And then we're doing an experimental activity, and that is the good news of the meeting. The bad news of the meeting is because of that I am hosting, so I apologize that you have to see me hosting once again, but I felt awkward putting a host through an experiment that we invented this week. So we also are then going to be taking questions and discussions, and of course doing our usual wiki love. So as a little bit of preparation, I'm going to introduce the experimental activity now so that it doesn't catch you off guard later and you have a little bit of time to prepare. This is a relatively simple experiment based on a thought premise that people would like to hear about more activities happening across the movement, but at the same time, people are nervous giving a presentation about activities that they are working on. So we're going to try something a little different this month. We're going to ask people to give. It can be just literally the name. It can be like a one-sentence description. You don't have to get in depth. If this encourages people to search for more information about your project on Meta or Media Wiki or wherever it may be, that's great. You don't have to go in depth. It can just be, I'm excited about this, and that's all. And then you're going to share 2 to 3 activities that other people are working on that you are also excited about. And you are allowed to repeat from others, although I seriously encourage you to try to come up with new activities to offer. So we're going to try that little experiment later on in the meeting. If you are joining remotely, you can give your input into IRC, and Joe will be able to pass it along. If you are here in person, we're going to have microphones, and we may even find a recruit to pass around a microphone, as we've got a reasonably good crowd today. And if you are not able to do either of those two, if you get it done in the next 15 minutes, you can email it to activitiesmeeting@wikimedia.org, and we will make sure that it gets shared. So again, brevity is key, and 2 to 3 activities of others, 1 to 2 activity that you are working on that you are excited about. Okay, so we're going to give that a try a little bit later. But first, let's begin with our usual, the movement update. It was a busy month for us. We figured out some machine learning can uncover Wikipedia's missing citation needed tags. We did a lot of great work there. We spotlighted that knowledge equity among the newest 20 community-led project grants, and we talked about those. These are links up on the Wikimedia blog if you're interested for more information. Unfortunately, a German court did force us to remove a part of a Wikipedia article's history. They ruled that the article had to be removed because it was bad. They didn't like that part. So we fought that in court. Unfortunately, we lost. They ruled that we were incorrect, and that was the outcome of that. So that did happen. So an FYI on that. And there's a blog post that goes into a lot more depth of what took place, if you're curious, as I was very curious. We created our own future, step closer. We had a great Wikimedia Summit last month for folks there. Did folks in the audience go to that? Yes, I'm seeing some naughty. Clap if you went. I know some people went. Okay, 1 person went. Great, good. It was great. I hear a lot of wonderful things. If you'd like to hear from the folks who did go, check out that article. Very exciting news. We're ending on 2 really great pieces of information. One is that we have one of our newest chapter of 4 or 5 years, Wikimedia Korea, has joined us. So we're super excited. So let's give them a round of applause. That way everyone can clap. There we go. You can all be excited for Korea. And also we received an additional $3.5 million to the Wikimedia endowment from one of our advisory members and his wife. So wonderful news there on the endowment front. Coming up, we've got the hackathon taking place in May. So if you'd like more information about that, go on to Meta or MediaWiki. And if you'd like information about Wikimania 2019, go to wikimania.wikimedia.org. So open registration, open call for proposals right now. And that's taking place in Sweden this year. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about this meeting. So A couple of years ago, we began retooling this meeting, and over the last year, we've really tried to open the format up so that anyone in the movement is able to participate. So, what does that mean exactly? This is your meeting. This is an opportunity. We used to go out and recruit for it, and that was kind of the old model. We moved away from that partly because it's very time intensive, and also because the feedback we were getting from people is that we weren't always selecting topics that they were interested in. And since we've switched to allowing anyone to contribute topics, the feedback has been far more positive, that people feel it's much more relevant to the things that they are doing. So we'd like to keep this model going, but the model only works if people contribute. So we want to see your presentations here. These can be things about affiliate projects. These can be movement events. These can be talks about Wiki Loves, insert anything here. These can be about technical projects. These can also be about experiments or things that we tried out, both successful and teachable moments. As Asaf has talked about at past meetings and we've talked about online several times, it's really important to share things that we didn't always do well with each other to make sure that we learn from that and that we do it better the next time. So it's okay to talk about something that didn't go great, but it's also a lot of fun to talk about things that went great. So you can do that too. If you are interested in doing it, we've made it super easy to do. You just have to go to MetaWiki, to the Wikimedia monthly activities meeting /sign up. There's a big button on the main page for the activities meeting, and if you need help with that, you can send us an email, activitiesmeeting@wikimedia.org. So that's the quick PSA for this meeting. I hope you enjoyed that commercial. With that, we're going to move on to the movement strategy update, and I will pass it over to the wonderful Tanvir.
Hi, thank you so much, Greg. What we are going to do today, we are going to do three things. The first one, I'm going to be an unofficial spokesperson for the working groups. And I'm going to try and call out some of the learning, some of the interesting things that they did around the Wikimedia Summit, because this time the Wikimedia Summit had a major player, which were the working group members, talking to the affiliate members, understanding what their concerns were around the movement strategy process. The second thing that we are going to do is also try and quickly recapitulate some of the moments of the Wikimedia Summit itself and bring to light one of the very interesting things that was done this year, which is called Key Listeners. Then I'm going to hand it over to Edgar, who's from the Wikimedians of Ecuador, to speak about what his experiences about the Wikimedia Summit this year was and what was the feedback that he has given to the working groups and to the movement strategy process. So without taking a lot of time, I will go into some of the key learnings and some of the key insights that the working groups have gleaned out of the Wikimedia Summit. If there are any mistakes, if I misrepresent them, all of this falls upon me and not on the working group members. If there are any questions, I'll try to address them and try to answer them. Otherwise, I'll make sure that I take it back to the working group members and then get back to you with responses. I noticed that we also have Liang, who's himself a working group member, and it might be a good idea for him to clarify any questions that would be around capacity building. But before the question and answers, let's get into the conversation. So the advocacy working group, next slide, please. Yeah, this was the Wikimedia Summit 2019. There were more than 210 people. Yes, that's the slide that I want. The working group members. Perfect. Thank you so much. So this slide has been seen oftentimes, and I think people are already beginning to have revulsion around this slide. But still, just for getting all the working groups around in the same place, this slide is helpful, and I shall go alphabetically. So the advocacy working group collected feedback on two key questions. The first question was, what does advocacy mean to you? And what should we as movement advocate for? They've had a lot of insights thanks to the Wikimedia Summit. The most important, they've had 9 key insights that they have indicated, but I will point out some of the insights that I believe are very key. That advocacy needs resources. And we also need a clearly defined set of values for advocacy. And the other key thing that I believe that came out of the Wikimedia Summit was advocacy done in the wrong way can endanger civil society. It points out to certain key questions, certain key challenges that the Wikimedia movement and open knowledge movement together will have to face. Moving to capacity building. The main takeaways for the capacity building working group during the Wikimedia Summit has been that language diversity is a barrier towards capacity building. and we need to address possible solutions in the recommendations. The other key insight that they had was that one size does not fit all. No capacity building measure can be replicated without customization and without understanding the local context. Another one of that was capacity building should be about people in the first place, then about systems, and then about structures. Everybody in the movement has something to offer, and our movement has to have the humility and has to have the reciprocity to understand and to learn from it. One other insight that they had was that there needs to be a searchable and a findable knowledge base of best practices when they are needed. Moving on to Community Health worked out a timetable and identified their next steps until Wikimania. And the most amazing thing was that they were able to get 51 personal interviews in the span of 3 days with Wikimedians, with affiliate members. These were partly structured interviews, which mainly looked into the scoping questions, and they also provided new perspectives for the working group members and to also identify what were the blind spots in the conversations that they were having. They've had a chance to plan their next steps. The next step would be a survey, which is being rolled out very soon. So please respond to the survey when it hits your email boxes, and also to conduct interviews to fill knowledge gaps. The diversity working group also had a very productive Wikimedia Summit. One of their key insights was that the language that the diversity working group was using, both in its official documents and in the conversation, was too complex, and there was an urgent need to simplify it. It constantly was noted that the scoping documents, which was supposed to be an access point into conversation, was itself complex, and there had to be more attempts made to explain the scoping documents. The other insight, according to the working group members, is that the the term diversity or the theme diversity is a very complex topic, and they were afraid in the beginning. They felt it was too challenging, but now they understand that it is very significant, and it is something that all of the working groups will have to pay attention to, and that they would be able to have discussions and deliberations across working groups. The partnerships working group also had a very meaningful discussion. They have been able to chart out their next steps. They have been able to identify the support needs, and they have also been able to come up with a tentative work plan, which takes into account the feedback that they have received during the Wikimedia Summit, and also they are looking forward to expanding the working group by adding new members. The product and technology working group faced some confusion about the scope of the working group when speaking to the chapter members and affiliates. They have also received feedback, but this feedback, interestingly, was very programmatic and not structural in the way that the questions were framed. The feedback, however, is very useful to implement and to design and to roll out programmatic interventions, but there needs to be a different kind of a conversation with community members to think together about the structural issues that are challenges or that needs to be reconciled around product and technology. One of the things that was highlighted by product and technology was that they could not talk about how to lower our learning curve to bring in new people into our movement and how to make technology more accessible. Terminologies used across the working groups, used specifically by the product and technology, was a little bit of a confusion. Who do we mean by user? Who do we mean by readers? All of these terms, and including the larger terms of diversity, larger terms of capacity, was slightly confusing. And one of the key takeaways for them is that they are going to model out a glossary of terms based on the work that was done earlier by capacity building working group. The resource allocation working group also was able to surface some of the key ideas that would help in developing long-term stability for the Wikimedia movement. The feedback that they received was that people, participants, affiliates, Wikimedians were all interested in talking about resource allocation, and they were also interested in talking about building stable structures. And these stable structures were structures that would help us move towards the strategic direction that we have been talking about. And this was not just about 1 year or single event approach that we can see now. This included addressing resource allocation working groups conversations included addressing the need to develop distributed capacity and not only centralized capacity. The working group also explored with the participants in the summit how to obtain resources outside our movement, the way that we imagine the movement as of now. And the working group has also been able to come up with a draft plan until Wikimania for its activities. Revenue Streams Working Group also had a very productive conversation. They were able to identify and build synergy across the working group, identify their next steps. They have also had an outline about the way that they will work together and what would be their methodology towards building the recommendations. Roles and responsibilities working group divided themselves into two smaller groups. One group was working on a design of the next steps until Wikimania and towards recommendations, and the other group was talking to participants, was talking to affiliates and gathering their feedback on the scoping documents and the larger questions of the governance of the roles and responsibilities across the movement. The other thing that they were able to do was to develop a framework for describing and evaluating potential and alternative governance models. They have probed into different parameters like conflict, adaptability, responsiveness, fragility, centralization, and all of these things. And they're developing governance models around this. And they are also in touch with other working groups so that they can also contribute to this. Next slide, please. So from the end of the organizers, what we wanted to do during the Wikimedia Summit was to do three things: was to reconnect, re-energize, and to plan. So the first day, we call it as the downloading, where we reconnected with the people, reconnected with the strategy process, identify what was done until this point of time, identify the next steps of how to collaborate together. There were two tracks. One was the working group time along with the chapters, and the other one was the chapters themselves took certain issues. I'm not in the capacity, I do not have capacity to speak about conversations that happen with chapters as the primary focus. So the working groups had the time, they were really eager to talk to the working group members, identify where synergies were, what were the overlapping themes, and how best to operate those things. Next slide, please. Once they had identified synergy, once they had identified the best way to talk to the working group members, both amongst their working group and the other working groups, they spoke about what was the necessity to change some of the movement structures that we have. This was not only a conversation with roles and responsibilities, but across the working groups. And at the end of the day, there was also a progress check-in across the working groups, which allowed us, which gave us a good sense of that we are moving forward and we are not stuck, or we are not using the energy, the tempo that was so well available in the Wikimedia Summit. Also, the second day was the Wikimedia Summit party, which was really, really fun. Next slide, please. The last day, we call it uploading, and what essentially happened in the uploading day was we identify what are our next steps, how to move forward now that we have identified what are going to be our best ways to collaborate, what are our areas of what are going to be pain points, what are going to be at least a draft vision of the support that needs to be given to the working group members. And then we spoke about what is going to happen next. We identified some of the overlapping themes. We identified the liaison model across the working groups, who is going to talk to which working group, how can these conversations go ahead. And the most important thing, according to me, on the day 3 was some of the observations that were made by key listeners. We had 3 key listeners, Emna Missouri, Sunil Abraham, and Ryan Merkley. I'm just going to take another minute to explain or to paraphrase what they said. Emna drew parallels between the chaos in the Arab countries and the one in the movement strategy process at this point of time. But she said that this tension was a good tension, that this tension was the tension between the diversity of a movement and some of the problems and the challenges that we are facing. And she urged and reiterated the fact that it is by constantly asking these questions, moving forward in this direction, that we would be able to contribute to the future of our movement. Sunil Abraham, who was also another key listener, said that what was one of the most amazing things about our movement, the Wikimedia movement in this case, was the financial capacity of our movement and how important role it can play in saving other open access movements. He also recommended to the strategy team and to the working group members that one should focus on developing processes that will solve problems systematically. Another suggestion that came out of Sunil was to close the loop in the community consultation process to prevent frustration and offering explanations as to why some of those reflections or suggestions had not been taken into account or rejected. Ryan Merkley was also one of the key listeners during the Wikimedia Summit, and Ryan described this entire movement strategy process as an act of leadership and ambition, as a hopeful act of leadership and ambition. What was really interesting was the way Ryan described this part of the strategy process, that this is the dark middle act. And one of the things that stayed with me and resonated with many of the working group members and the participants of the Wikimedia Summit was that he said that doing strategy is going to make us feel sad. It is going to make us feel sad because we will be doing prioritization, and prioritization means that we are choosing between two valid and perfectly worthy ideas. And this is the message that we are trying to take to the working groups and take to the broader movement, that this is about prioritization of what would make our movement stronger, what would make our movement more stable, and what would make our movement much more ready to face challenges of the future. Next slide, please. So all of the things that I have spoken wearing the hat of the movement strategy, a member of the core team of the movement strategy process, but the Wikimedia Summit was as much of the working group members. In fact, it was more of an affiliate conference. And Edgar, who's the national coordinator of the Wikimedians of Ecuador, was also a very active participant of the movement strategy. And I would like to invite him to speak about what was his experience of the Wikimedia Summit, how did he find the Wikimedia Summit. There are certain key questions that he's trying to answer. So Edgar, over to you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tanvir, and good morning to everyone who's listening to me right now. Uh, as Tanvir said, I am the national coordinator for Wikimedias Ecuador. We are a Latin American user group that has been developing in a fast pace, and some of the recommendations that I gave into the discussions of the Wikimedia Summit are some of what I am trying to tell you in this meeting. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Some of these questions I found really interesting because, in the first place, about my interaction with working groups, uh, I come from IberoCop, which is the Latin American regional structure for our movement. And as a member of IberoCop, I found it useful to talk to the members of the working groups who also belong to IberoCop, because at least I think we have at least one member for each working group that's moving the discussion forward in our movement, in our regional instance. So my interaction was mainly through them to get to know the working groups, how the working groups are developing the discussions. And also I got to meet other members through them and talk and try to exchange not only information but also uh, the views that Wikimedistas de Ecuador had on some of the topics that were being discussed. And also, I had the chance to be heard by people who belong to the working groups and get their feedback. But not only through the summit, in the but in the way that I could use this feedback from people in my own language that became really useful in the last minute to have a clearer vision of how we could participate in the movement strategy process. Uh, so also, what feedback I provided to the working groups and core team was that uh, mainly we were really interested in the roles and responsibilities topics. So my main goal during this summit was to provide feedback to that group on what we have been doing as a user group in our own context, because I understand that not all of the user groups in our movement are developing in the same pace or have the same, we could say, privileges on what we could do and we could not do. For example, one of the things that I said was that the way that affiliates are structured right now is not clear, beginning with the moment where they join the movement. There is no welcoming or onboarding process that could support them to grow and solve conflicts in the best way possible. And something that could help solve this problem is that maybe the regional instances of our movement, such as CEE or IberoCup or other regional groups, could actually try to help not only the user groups that are focused on territorial on a territory or a thematic uh, topic to develop faster, uh, and also that there is no clear rules, at least in the Latin American context, on what this process could be. And I guess that could be some of the things that we share with other user groups. Also, I talked about how the actual process of the how affiliates grow isn't really clear, because user groups can grow as fast as their circumstances develop in their own country. For example, it took 4 years for Wikimedistas Ecuador to actually have a good number of volunteers that could help support the projects that we have. But at the same time, just that we have as much volunteers as we could think that we need, there is also a lot of people, a lot of institutions that would want to work with us. So it could grow to a really fast pace, but not for every affiliate. So even in that way, user groups could end working in the same way that a chapter does right now, without the same benefits. So one of the responsibilities for the foundation should be provide support for the affiliates who have been working hard, and also that now other institutions want to work with a signed agreement or something that an affiliate cannot do on their own. So it could be also helpful if the foundation comes and helps and provides support to these affiliates. Also, the integration between affiliates should be made clearer, because not only the Wikimedia Summit or Wikimedia should integrate more perspectives, taking into consideration that each affiliate has now more diversity than ever. And also, it is a responsibility for the affiliates to seek for diversity in the whole meaning of what this word means. Because if there is something that needs to be done with the communities that have been segregated for ages in the process of constructing knowledge, that is to integrate them into this new process. If we want to work on what being the central infrastructure for knowledge. Could we please go to the next slide? Now, some of the learnings that I gathered from this Wikimedia Summit was that no affiliate isn't capable of bringing something to the table. Uh, 2 years ago, when we started talking about this whole process, uh, because my working group, because my user group wasn't developed as it is right now, I thought that we couldn't participate in these discussions because it could be kind of overwhelming, and also that we weren't ready for that kind of discussions. But in the way, I personally really felt that we could have been growing faster if we actually realized that these topics aren't as far as we thought they were. I learned that through other affiliate experiences on how to grow and build capacity in my own country, uh, that I could also have something to offer from my perspective, and what is wrong, what is good, and potentially can be helpful for others that have been struggling with the same issues that I had to deal with while working in Ecuador, and pushing and moving our mission forward. So I learned that every single experience counts, and that now it's time for all us for all of us this, and that because this could help us build what we need in the future from not only the Wikimedia movement, but also what we need from ourselves, from the affiliates, to actually move our mission further, uh, and then uh, and then finally reach our goals. Also, the next steps for Wikimedistas Ecuador in participating in this process. Uh, we actually scheduled a meeting, a virtual meeting for Wikimedistas Ecuador, to talk about what we have learned in this summit. So I shared with them the experiences that I heard about in the Wikimedia Summit related to this process and got some feedback on what we need to do next. For example, right now we are trying to work with our indigenous communities in our countries because we just came from a successful project in where we learned a lot of how to integrate indigenous communities in Ecuador to this knowledge into working with Wikipedia, not only with Wikipedia, but also with some other instances where they actually bring their knowledge to the digital ways. Uh, so that's one of our main points right now, to try to gather them, to have a meeting. And we are also working with our community liaisons. And I am myself the community liaison for Wikimedistas Ecuador. So we're working close to have this meeting in 2 weeks to try to gather their thoughts and also their experiences on what it means to build knowledge from their own point of view, so that we could have more diversity in our conversations. Uh, and so I guess that could be all. If we go to the next slide, I guess, because I am kind of done right now. So thanks for listening to me. I guess Tanvir will come back with the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Edgar. What to expect next from us is that the community conversations have been ongoing. There have been the scoping documents that have been shared on Meta. Please provide feedback. The analysis of scope with the community conversation is an activity that's already started. The working group members would start very soon to draft and to build recommendations. We would need your support on that note, so please help us with that as well. Next slide, please. Just wanted to say thank you. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. I have my email address here and also Carl's. We would be happy to receive questions or to incorporate suggestions that are given. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you.
You can clap. It's okay. It's just bizarre momentary hesitation of everyone looking at each other like, is it okay to clap? Yeah, you're allowed to clap. It's all good. Okay. So now we're going to try this little experimental activity. And as a reminder, in case it's too complicated, I'm going to explain it one more time just in case. So this is your opportunity either here in the room or via IRC. If you have emailed, I've got those. If you wanted to email now, it's too late because I'm already standing up here and have pulled out the emails, so sorry about that. But for everybody else, you will share 1 to 2 activities you are working on and are excited about. And again, it could just be, I am working on getting our, I don't know, dogs to the moon, and I'm super excited about that. And then 2 to 3 things that other people are working on. Joe's working on getting hamsters to Pluto. I think that's pretty awesome. And the advancement team is working on getting cats to Mars. So I think in total, we've got really great animal outreach space coverage. So it can be as simple as that. So that's kind of what we're going for here. You can elaborate a little bit more. You can offer some teasers. That's all great. For the questions and discussion part, people are welcome to ask questions there, although again, these aren't like in-depth things. So the questions should hopefully be more along the lines of, where do I get more information about that? So if you have in-depth questions, let us know and we'll try to answer those later. So with that explanation, is there anyone in the room who would like to start? Otherwise, I've got some via email. And we also have our magnificent mic carrier. So we have a mic that can be brought over to you if you would like. Otherwise, I will jump into the emails. We'll start with an email one. That way the folks in the room can kind of ease into this. So Jan is excited about trying to understand what we need to give our volunteer translation better tools, documentation, and communication tools, and also the Tech News project, and what others are working on. Really, really happy to see the reference previews Wikimedia Deutschland is working on, and also looking forward to what everyone, communities, Wikimedia, and Foundation staff will do with Wikimedia in Stockholm. So that's one to get us started. If you don't think I will stand up here silently for 10 minutes with none of you saying anything, you have wrongly judged your host.
I can read one from IRC, maybe.
Wonderful.
We have 2. So Sam Walton working on Retraction Bot, I don't. That's the thing, because I'm just reading them out. I don't know fully what they are, but you can find more about that on the English Wikipedia. And there's also Jake Orlowitz doing his One Lib One Ref campaign at onelib1ref.org for more information on that.
Hello. Hey, I'm Marshall. I work on the growth team at the WMF, and I'm excited because our team is going to be releasing a project called the Newcomer Homepage next week, and it's going to be in our target wikis that we test projects in, which are Czech, Korean, and Vietnamese right now. And this is a feature to help newcomers get oriented on the wiki, figure out how to get started with editing. So we're hoping that that is successful and that we can move it to other wikis afterward. And something that others are working on that I'm excited about is Hackathon. Next month. Those of us that are attending got a really great email today explaining how to sign up for sessions and how to figure out what to do at Hackathon, and so it seems really well organized, and I think will be great.
Wonderful. We have another one from the room, and then I've got one more in email. I will give one. I'm super excited about the design improvements being made on the foundation website that'll be rolling out soon, and projects others are working on. I'm very excited about the brand project, and I'm super excited to see, I don't know if you saw, but recently on Commons, you can now add instances of in the photos, and that is super, super awesome. I was playing around with that this week, so I'm excited about where that's going. Yeah, structured data on Commons team. Woo woo. I can tell you're all itching. People on YouTube, this is an exciting moment for them, yeah.
Hello, I'm Neil Patel Quinn. I'm on the product analytics team at the WMF. We do data analysis or data science if we're feeling particularly pompous. We have been working on trying to improve some of the core metrics that we use to understand the overall health of the movement. So things like the number of active editors across all our projects, the number of page views, retention of new editors. So we've been revisiting some of those definitions and trying to make them better at measuring the actual things in the reality of the community that they're trying to measure. I'm excited about the work that the trust and safety team is doing, working on measurements for community health. And I'm also excited about the work that the communications team is doing, proposing an ambitious rebranding. I know it's a bit controversial, and we'll see what happens with it, but I'm glad that they've made the proposal and kicked off a very interesting and deep conversation.
Okay, suddenly everyone online realized the email option existed, so we're starting to get more via email randomly. Okay, which is great. If you'd still like to send them, I'm apparently still getting pings. So one that we've got from Philippe is they're excited about cascading content on the Wikipedias. They were talking about it's a super efficient way to organize and reuse content. It is mainly in use on Spanish Wikipedia right now, but there is information about it on English Wikipedia and other language Wikipedias. So very awesome. Some of these are long, so I'm trying to describe them down. Okay, another one we've got is from Melissa, who we launched WikiBlind 2 days ago as a new international user group for blind, visually impaired, and allies. We are designing innovative and radically inclusive training programs for all ages, abilities, and cultures. Wiki Wonderland and Wiki Ninos. Very, very grateful for all the work that everyone here does. Wiki Summit was amazing. Gave them and us their group, rocket fuel, and so many people want to be a part of the movement as soon as possible. Newcomer orientation sounds great. Some great feedback there. I will stare at you all. I'll even start calling him. No, I won't do that. That's kind of mean. I might, but we've got one other one in email, and then I just stare at all of you until we get 2 more people in the room. So just be aware we're going with at least 2 more of you. Oh, great. Go ahead, Joe.
So yeah, I'm going to raise 2 things my team's working on. We just launched pretty recently the Friendly Space Policy Consultation for 2019 on Meta. So if you type in Friendly Space Policy Consultation 2019, you'll find it, which is looking to sort of make potential changes to the friendly space policy and working out what it currently does well and what it needs to improve. So if you can help out with your experiences there, that'd be fantastic. I also wanted to call out our work on the user reporting system, on the anti-harassment tools team's work on the user reporting system, which is sort of aiming to provide a reporting system for communities that makes reporting things less stressful for users and generating higher quality reports that can be actioned more easily for harassment-related purposes. So,
Woo. All right. Get one other one via email, and then again, we're going to wait for silence until we get two more in the room. So we've got one from Ad, who's, excited about the ongoing affiliate selection board process, and special thanks to Erica and Kim for working on that. Also excited about the talk page consultation, which they worked on with Dutch Wikipedia, and excited about the talk about the working groups for the 2030 strategy process. And also the Wikimedia L discussion around Wiki News. And finally, congrats to Wikimedia Korea. Yeah, there's the microphone right there.
Okay, hello. Yeah, so I'm excited about the work that our editing team is doing on improving mobile. There's two things you might have experienced if you have used the mobile visual editor recently. One, there's a kind of a smoother transition between reading and editing, and then we've also released section editing, the idea being that you can better relate your reading experience to the editing experience because you can find that snippet of text that you were trying to affect while you were reading inside the editor. And we're going to be continuing with that work this next quarter. Most exciting, I think, are going to be introducing new kind of mobile edit cards to help better structure the edit flow for a context that's more constrained in space and time, and also working on the toolbar to give people a better sense of orientation within the document and the flow of their edits. That's it.
perfect.
All right.
And I have one more from IRC. If you bear with me while I put this back in here. Oh, how do I do this? Okay. Delphine, excited about the amount of work to make programs and community engagement departments special for years to come. And the shifts that they bring, the ideas around working much more and better with the Wikimedia affiliates.
All right, one more from the room. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
I think that I personally have been inspired and excited about all the work that the growth team is doing in being really intentional about how we welcome and I don't think assimilate's the right word, but onboard people to the movement, both in a technical way, but also socially. That's it.
All right. Excellent. Anyone else in the room? By which I mean, there we go. Wonderful. See, you were all saved from having to sit here for 15 more minutes and staring at me.
Okay, like that. So I would like to say that it was very exciting working with product analytics on going through questions that they would like to ask during interview for the QA data analyst. It was totally different area for me, and it was interesting and challenging to see what should be asked and just to be in interview. So that was exciting for me and new.
Awesome. Thank you. Unless there are any other ones, this is the 10-second hold. Anyone else on IRC? I think we've gone through all the emails. Let me do one more check. Yep. We seem to be good. All right. Well, thank you all for participating in that little experiment. I hope you enjoyed it. I found it informational for myself. So you've seen us do some experiments in this meeting in the past. We may do them again. We always appreciate you cooperating with us as we try something out and see how it goes, and then take notes back and maybe try it again in the future. So with that, let's move on to questions and discussion. Are there any questions or discussion? I don't think so. Strategy did a great job being very thorough, so I think they covered everything super well. Do a pause. Lincoln seems to be nervous about your silence, so you may hear him squirming over here. All right, and with that, we will move on to a reminder to submit your ideas. Again, you can go to MetaWiki, Wikimedia Monthly Activities Meeting /sign up, or if you just search for Monthly Activities Meeting, you'll eventually find it. So please go there if you'd like to sign up and give a future 3-minute to 10-minute presentation. With that, we'll move on to WikiLove Live, which I know feels a little bit like the last experiment we did, so I recognize that. But I actually have a real WikiLove that came in via email, which was truly marked as WikiLove. It wasn't a like, hey, I think this is for the other thing. They really said for WikiLove. So I'm going to read that. Well, if anyone else thinks of a WikiLove they'd like to offer, great. So this is from Erica. Hi, everyone. As you may know, there's an ongoing process for affiliates to select the next 2 board members by Wikimania. If you do know about it, it's highly likely that you've been voluntold to support this process in a way or in another at some point, and you deserve a lot of kudos for that. Today's shout out, though, goes to our amazing community of volunteer translators. It's all bold, italics, is like all the emphasis you can give on that, who have been taking good care of selection-related pages promptly since the first call for translations, making it easier for affiliates to grasp the process and to be able to discuss the candidates so far. Thank you. I owe you so much ice cream. Wow, apparently they're getting ice cream. Please feel free to mention this whenever our paths cross. She's legitimately going to buy these people ice cream. I'm really impressed. All right. Anyone can join this brilliant squad. Search for Translation Central on MetaWiki, and you'll land on a centralized page that will help you figure out at a glance what's left to translate for this year. Again, it's been a pleasure to support the processes like this when one sees proactively and willingness in volunteers to help. It really reminds us why we do what we do. All the best from Erica, Community Relations Team. It looks like we've got some WikiLove here.
Hello. So I would like to give some appreciation to Afro Thunder 3007730, aka Eddie J. Carswell III. This is I believe, is a editor on the English Wikipedia. He made a request for some analysis to the product analytics team last year about how portals on the English Wikipedia are used. It was a very well thought out request. We decided as an experiment we mostly do analysis for other teams in the Wikimedia Foundation, but we did an experiment to try to help a community member. It didn't work out very well. I'll say we didn't do a great job of it, but Afro Thunder was very understanding, and so many appreciations for that.
I have WikiLove from RC. We have WikiLove for the Wikimedia Deutschland technical wishes team, who are consistently, developing features that I like, I being Pine, and that are applicable to multiple wikis. So they wanted to thank them for their good work. And we also have WikiLove from Tanvir on the Google Meet for Robert. I'm guessing Robert Muller, our fantastic front office and facilitator. He's been with us for a very long time. So.
And sadly, for context, in case you don't know, Robert is departing the staff and is moving across country. So we are very, very sad. Robert has been here for a very, very long time. He's an amazing part of the organization. So much WikiLove to Robert from all of us, who I think is standing around the corner. Okay. Yeah, round of applause. Yeah. All right. Any other? I've got WikiLove I wanted to offer to the legal, security, and OIT group for a policy they're working on internally around use of equipment and things like that. It's a super complicated process. It's very intense. It's very heated and passionate discussion. So I really appreciate the thought that they're putting into it and how important that is. And so really like that they're doing that and appreciate how well they're handling everything. Anything else? All right.
I'll give one. Sorry to jump in. I asked my team if they had anything. They wanted to thank the admins who are willing to try the partial blocks feature, which just launched on a bunch of wikis recently, and who worked with their communities to sort of find new use cases for that and documenting their approach, and just overall being very helpful with how that's sort of rolled out and how that's been a pretty successful launch for that particular feature. So thanks to them.
Hello. Yes, I'd like to give wiki love to a lot of the designers on audiences who over the past week have kind of worked very hard with very little context to create a lot of vision art that's been helpful to communicate both to us internally and other teams. And I think one of the things that's come with that is a lot of people reacting to what they put out, knowing that it's just concept art. And I think that takes a lot of vulnerability to tolerate that level of critique. So nice. Thank you, designers.
Whoop, whoop. Anyone else? All right, so with that, give everyone a round of applause. And Lincoln, as always, wants to challenge you to give at least 2 pieces of wiki love to someone else this week. It's always a great way to show your appreciation. So do that either in person, online, via email, whatever works for you. But that's Lincoln's challenge for you. So with that, give yourselves a round of applause. Wow, okay, let's try that again, because that was a pretty, like, okay, I know it's morning, but let's try it again. Give yourselves a round of applause. There you go. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so with that, thank you all very much for attending this month's metrics meeting. We'll see you all next month. Thank you all.